A lot of Roblox games blow up but then suddenly fall off, and today we're going to be looking at 6 Roblox games that fell off. Let's start with Mad City, a Roblox game with 2.5 billion visits, but it went from averaging 20 to 40,000 players to now 1 to 2,000, causing players to say it fell off. But how did we get to this point? Well, to understand, we have to rewind 7 years ago to 2017. After being on the platform for a few years and finding some success, the owner, Master, wanted to make a cops and robbers themed game. He could script and guide the direction of the game, but he needed some help, so he recruited 2 other devs. Firstly, Fame Chris, who was in charge of the map. Then next, Nick 10 Elf, aka Nick, to create 3D models for the game, such as cars and weapons. And together, these 3 started working on Mad City, not knowing at the time this game would change their lives. Mad City ended up launching in late 2018 and around 2019, and right when it launched, it started to find success and would only continue to grow bigger as time went on. How did this happen? Well, they launched at a perfect time. See, Jailbreak, Mad City's biggest competitor, and also a game everyone said they copied, was launched at the start of 2017. And over the course of a few years, we were kind of getting tired of Jailbreak since it was the same thing over and over again, and that's right when Mad City came in and launched their game. A similar game with a fresh new aspect, a bigger map, and an overall fun new game. And this also started a big rivalry between Mad City and Jailbreak, which only helped the game, because Jailbreak was growing into one of the biggest Roblox games, which only found Mad City also growing since people wanted to see the competition. And for a while, Mad City dominated, getting more players than Jailbreak for just minor updates, and overall just getting more players active on certain days. And this will continue for the next few years, Mad City and Jailbreak going back and forth, and both games growing and becoming some of the biggest games. This is also due to the fact that both games constantly release big updates to try to compete against each other. Just around 2 years after Mad City's launch, it hit 1 billion visits in 2020, and 2020 started off very strong, averaging 20 to 30,000 players every day. The devs had done it. They had a viral game and were reportedly making 6 figures a year, but then they started to lose players, and they're losing them fast. The start of 2020 was good, but every day they lose more and more players. The game was now starting to die. At the start of 2020, they averaged 20 to 30,000 players. By the end of 2020, they're averaging around 10,000 players. They did recover a bit with the big update later on, but ever since this fall, they couldn't recover, and the game just keeps losing more and more players. Nowadays sitting at 1 to 2,000 active players. These devs were on top of the world with the biggest game on Roblox to now, a forgotten game that everyone says fell off. What went wrong? Well, they started struggling with releasing consistent updates, so their competitors like Jailbreak, who were releasing consistent updates, started dominating them once again. And some stuff also happened behind the scenes, like a major scripter leaving and other employees later, delaying their updates even further, and them having to spend a lot of time not updating their game. Also, a lot of players weren't happy with the updates they did release, and the overall direction of the game. On top of everything, just recently, a dev said the development is paused since they're struggling and no longer have the resources. So unfortunately, Mad City couldn't keep up with all the demand, and with problems behind the scenes, updates just kept getting delayed, and players kept on leaving. And to make it all worse, the game apparently isn't making money, and isn't even profitable anymore. But if you thought that was crazy, wait till you hear about our next story. Because our next game is Elemental Battlegrounds, a Roblox game with 416 million visits. It went from averaging thousands of players to now a few hundred. Let's break down what happened. It all starts with the developer, MyGame43. He made a few games on Roblox that didn't find much success, but in 2016, one of his games, Elemental Wars, took off and was doing really well. So he followed up with Elemental Battlegrounds in 2017, and the game would also find success. He was even a part of a Roblox event a year later. MyGame43 had done it. He had a pretty successful game, but he seemingly was never satisfied. Players noticed updates were a bit slow in 2018, probably because MyGame43 was also working on another project, Parkour Simulator at the time. This game also found success, so now he was trying to balance both of them. Over time, Elemental Battlegrounds dominated though, and became his most successful game, only getting bigger and bigger over time. Despite all this though, the update pattern for Elemental Battlegrounds was a bit weird. Just 2 months of the game being out, he took a 1-month break for updates, then he released them consistently, and took a 5-month break that same year. And this pattern would continue for the next couple of years, although the game will still perform well. But then in 2019, fans noticed something yet again. The game was moving slower and not being updated as much. It always seemed like MyGame43 had something else to work on, and it was true, he had a new project. But this time his new project would shock not just fans of the game, but all of Roblox. What was his new project? Blox Fruits. Yes, the Blox Fruits, which are one of the biggest Roblox games ever made. He took everything he learned from these projects and applied it to Blox Fruits. Blox Fruits didn't immediately take off though, so the game was still getting updated here and there. But then in 2022, things changed. Blox Fruits was already doing well, but it started to blow up even further. And by this point, MyGame43 had a tough choice to make, focusing all on Blox Fruits to make it one of the biggest games on Roblox, or focusing time on both so both games are popular. Well, you can probably guess what he chose. He went all in on Blox Fruits. He released one last major update, some random fixes here and there, but for the most part the game was abandoned. The story is actually wild. MyGame43 had a successful game, but he was still ambitious and working on more projects, which ultimately left him abandoning his game with 416 million visits to pursue his game, which now has over 38 billion visits. which was a good ending, but our next game wasn't so lucky, because it's Design It, a game with 243 million visits that used to average thousands of players, but now only 10 to 20 players a day. By the way, if you made it this far, please subscribe. Anyways, the owner of the game, Team Killed, made a bunch of Roblox games and was developing on the platform for a while before finding success. Eventually though, he had a breakthrough. and sword fighting game started to gain some traction. The game wasn't mega viral, but it still was pretty impressive. Team Kills wanted to keep up this momentum, so his next game was Design It, a fashion competition game where players are given a budget and a theme to design an avatar, kind of a precursor to modern versions like Dress to Impress. And while this game ended up blowing up, a lot of YouTubers were playing it and it was overall a big roles game at the time. But also with time came the fall. Every year the game got less and less players. What went wrong? Well, it's kind of hard to tell because there's not much information on the game, but when you play it, there are a few things that stand out. Firstly, the game is still pretty old style and not modernized, so it doesn't really stand out and can't really compete with modern games that do the same style. And also, games like these seem to have struggled with updates since there's not much you can change. The concept always stays the same. And for this game, it never changed. So with the lack of updates and changes, the game just kind of faded away and became forgotten. Also with that, the dev is constantly launching and working on new projects it seems, none of which got the same success as Design It, but they are being worked on constantly. And Design It has been updated over a year now, so he might have abandoned it. And unfortunately, this dev was never able to find this level of success again, which is a sad ending, but our next story is even sadder, because our next game is Kaiju Universe, a Roblox game with 700 million visits, but it only averages around 1,000 players a day, which isn't the worst, but it used to average 6 to 10,000 and 15 to 20,000 players in its prime. The owner Vera has been developing on the platform for a while. For the most part, he seemed to be a developer on projects, rather than launching anything of his own. And for the most part, he didn't really have a big breakthrough game on his account. Even the games he worked on didn't seem to find much success. Vera had been on the platform for years, but still nothing landed, but one day everything would change. He seemingly used everything he learned in his years of Roblox to make Kaiju Universe, a PvP game where you act as Godzilla. The first year or so of launch though was slow. He didn't get that much momentum, but slowly, he would finally have his breakthrough. In 2021, the game started picking up, doubling his usual players. And from that point on, it just got bigger and bigger. Kaiju Universe was blowing up, Vera had done it, but he couldn't celebrate for too long, because one day everything stopped. Literally. The game was shut down and deleted, stopping all the momentum he spent years building up. What happened? Well, if you remember, I mentioned it was a Godzilla game, and well, the people who made Godzilla weren't happy about this, so the copyright took down the game. In a post, the dev said, "It was with a heavy heart that I shared some news with you today. Due to a DMC request, we've had to take Kaiju Universe down. It's certainly not the outcome we hoped for, but it's not all bleak." They then went on to say they were hoping to get an official license, which unfortunately never came. So it's forced the devs to change up the entire style of the game if they wanted to keep it up, which is exactly what they did. The game was down for a few months, but eventually came back. However, the comeback wasn't what people were expecting. People didn't like the new style, and since the game was gone for a few months, all their momentum was gone. Ever since the incident, they struggled to get back the players they had, and the game seems to be dying. To be fair, this wasn't entirely their fault. They were given a tough situation and did the best they could. A very unfortunate outcome though. If you thought that was wild though, wait till you hear this next story, because our next game is Anime Mania. This is the most confusing and wild story yet. This is the owner behind Anime Mania, Yakris, and his style of game seems to be very interesting. A lot of Robloxers make games in hopes of them getting successful, and when one hopefully does, they put a bunch of dedication into it, constant updates, new ideas, and more. But with Yakris, it's kind of the opposite. His game launching strategy seems to be to launch quick games to make them viral. Once they blow up and he probably makes a bunch of money, he leaves the game and starts working on the next game. This is what happened with Anime Mania. The game launched in 2021 and had a pretty good start. Already it was blowing up, averaging 10 to 20,000 players by July 2021. And from this point on, the game kinda just stopped updating, and they didn't really do anything with it. It quickly fell from 10,000 players to 5,000, then 1,000, eventually just averaging 200 to 500 players just a couple months later. But it doesn't end here. The game was quiet for basically an entire year until randomly in May of 2022, they started hyping up the game again. They were hyping it up like crazy, hyping stuff off that people wanted so bad, and dropped an update finally, which brought the game back. It spiked back up to 5,000 players, but it died again quickly, now averaging 40 to 50 players a day. What happened? Well, the return wasn't as hype as he made it out to seem. A lot of what they promised and hyped up wasn't even added, and what they did add was disappointing. A lot of people deem this now as one of the worst comebacks ever for a Roblox anime game, but like I mentioned, the owner behind all this just keeps making games over and over again, and if you look at his Twitter, he's in the process of making another anime game, a super confusing ending. They had a viral game and just did nothing with it, and nothing with all the momentum. But this moves on to our next game, being Speed City, a Roblox game with 330 million visits, but only around 50 to 100 people active. It used to average thousands. This actually wasn't the dev's first speed game though. In 2017, he created Speed Simulator, which did really well. It was his breakthrough game. So for the next year, he spent trying to recreate and make a better version using the same speed format he knew worked. He did also launch some other games that didn't do that well, but they seemed to be just fun small projects. Eventually though, Speed City did release and also found success. It was very similar to a Speed Simulator, but with new maps, new ideas, and an overall more polished version, which is also why I found success and ultimately ended up performing better. But over time, Speed City just started dying. It kept losing players, and there seems to be a few reasons for this. Firstly, lack of major updates. The game did have minor updates here and there, but players needed major updates to keep playing, so the game felt fresh, and unfortunately, they didn't get much of those, causing a lot of people to leave. Also with that, since there isn't much content being added, Once you fully played through and grind the game, there's not much to do. So a lot of players also probably left because of those reasons. The game still does seem to have minor updates to this day, but struggles to get back as players, and the dev hasn't done much beyond these games yet. They still seem to do random projects here and there, but nothing achieving the same success as the speed games. In general, a lot of Roblox games fall off. No hate to the devs, by the way, just interesting to look at these stories. Some games die for big crazy reasons, some die for a simple reason. Every game story is a bit different. If you enjoyed, YouTube thinks you're gonna like the video on the screen right now, so click to watch it and find out. I'll see you in the next one.